Hi there and welcome to the channel and to this my birthday book haul. I was 52 or 53 this week, depending upon which system one uses for reckoning one's age. The Western way, I'm 52, but in Chinese culture you're 1 on the day you're born, making me 53. Also, the date of my birthday was different under each of these systems. In the Chinese system, the date moves around each year because it tracks the lunar calendar, which means if you were born at the time of a full moon, then each subsequent birthday will also be at the time of a full moon, which I find rather beautiful, and I do regard it now as my true birthday. In the Western system, of course, your birthday is frozen on one particular date, the 8th of November in my case. As regards gifts, it was only my good wife who bought me anything, so to support my booktubing, I received a new tripod, which came with this Bluetooth remote control, so I can turn the video camera on and off without having to leave my seat. So I feel like a god holding this. And then she bought me 2 art books, and we'll begin the book haul with this. I must warn you, there is a considerable pile here to get through, so you may wish to get a drink while watching this video, and I have one here, so my voice will not disappear during the course of this video. Okay, we're ready to begin. So first up we have this, Stephen Calloway's Aubrey Beardsley, with, on the reverse, a portrait of the man himself. He died at the tragically young age of only 25, but during his short life he produced an outstanding body of work, and this book features 195 illustrations with 50 full colour plates. And so I'll show you some of these that grab my attention. I've read the first 4 chapters actually, and the accompanying text is guilty of a few stylistic lapses, but it is richly informative. I didn't realise Beardsley was so influenced by the pre-Raphaelite Burne-Jones during the early part of his career, and actually spent quite a bit of time with Burne-Jones prior to them having a fallout. Let me just show you one of these pictures. This one is particularly finely detailed, extremely beautiful. I think we'll just have one more. And there's a peacock skirt, which is very beautiful too. I can't find it right now. No, I'll just show you some colour plates instead. You get the idea. For anyone like myself really into the yellow book, into Wilde, Beerbohm and Aubrey Beardsley, then this book is a treat. Next, another art book. My wife really knows what I'll enjoy because it is another Kokoschka book, Kokoschka and Alma Mahler. Alma Mahler was the widow of Gustav Mahler and the future wife of Walter Gropius, and in between the death of her first husband and marrying Gropius, she had a fling with the artist Kokoschka, and this book charts their relationship, and it's really full of some beautiful illustrations. I just want to show you a fan that Kokoschka produced for Mahler. There's another one, but I found this one very beautiful. Okay. And I'll just show you the design he did. Oh, here's a better view of the fan. Wonderful piece of art. Oh, I should mention at this point the craziest fact about Kokoschka, in case you did not hear my earlier remarks about him. After he broke up with Mahler, he had a life-size doll of her commissioned, and far from being ashamed of this doll, he showed it off to all and sundry until it was destroyed one night during a wild party at his house. Okay, those are the gifts. Now we'll move on to the rest of the pile. And first up we have this 4 romantic tales. And when I picked this up, I thought it looked rather unpromising from the cover. However, I could not have been more wrong, because one of these tales was absolutely amazing, and it was Achim von Arnim, yes, the mad invalid of Fort Ratonneau, sometimes rendered as the mad veteran of Fort Ratonneau, and basically a crazy old soldier takes the entire city of Marseille hostage because he's holed up in an arsenal and threatening to blow the city of Marseille to kingdom come. It's superb, and it stands comparison with Kleist's magnificent Michael Kohlhaas. Who else do we have here? Blonde Eckbert by Ludwig Tieck. That was also quite good. And finally, E.T.A. Hoffmann, one of the most famous producers of German romantic ghost stories with My Cousin's Corner Window. Yeah, that was okay. It really kind of reveals the method of a writer, so writers themselves might find that of interest. All right, more ghost stories actually. The next one is this Fantastic Tales, edited by Italo Calvino, no less. And so what he does is he has some from the 19th century, and then he chooses, no, they're all from the 19th century, sorry, but some are the visionary fantastic, his own coinage there. And the others are the everyday fantastic. So I'll start with those. The Telltale Heart by Poe, The Shadow by Hans Christian Andersen, Country of the Blind by H.G. Wells, The Bottle Imp by Robert Louis Stevenson. And then the visionary fantastic, we have The Sandman, another Hoffman tale, Wandering Willie's Tale by Sir Walter Scott, The Elixir of Life by Balzac. Okay, you get the idea. But what I really liked about this book was it had great introduction by Italo Calvino, pretty much all of his commentary on literature. It's just fascinating. So, more ghost stories over here. Gothic Tales of Terror in 2 volumes. Actually, these are from the University Library. Look at that, with that plastic-looking snake wrapped around a quill. Very, very cheap, very gaudy. And then this one's even worse, isn't it? It reminds one of Miss Havisham from Great Expectations. But I did take a look at these. Classic horror stories from Europe and the United States. So I'll just give you a title or two. The Wild Huntsman, or The Demon Skeleton Chase. That is by Gottfried August Berger, so more German Romanticism. The Ghost Seer by Schiller. Yes, that had an influence on The Monk by Matthew Lewis. And what's this one more? The Devil's Ladder by Alois Schreiber. Okay, enough. History now. I think there's quite a lot of history in here. This one is Lefebvre, The French Revolution, with a truly awful cover. What is this? A cake? I'm really not convinced about that cover. Anyway, never mind. Then more history, and it's this time Jacob Burckhardt. Now there is a cover one can approve of. Beautiful. And it's his The Civilization of the Renaissance in Italy. And his big idea in one of the chapters here is that the Renaissance marks the ascent of individuality, and he outlines just why that was. Okay, beautifully written actually. Then literary history this time. It's Leonard Woolf, husband rather, of Virginia. Oh dear, forgive me. And this is an autobiography of the years 1911 to 1918, and it says a masterpiece by Quentin Bell. Isn't he one of the Wolf clan himself? It's rather incestuous as ever with Bloomsbury, but I really do like the design of this book. Yes, very solid feel in the hand as well. Next up, Jean-Paul Sartre, The Situations by him, which is Sartre's thoughts on a whole bunch of other literary figures, from Gide to Nathalie Sarraute, Camus, etc. Haven't dipped into this yet, but it was very cheap, so I picked that up. Next, ancient Greece, and we have here, it might not be ancient Greece, a little, oh yes, ancient Greece. It is Plotinus, the Aeneads, and this philosophy of good and evil contained therein was quite influential on the Middle Ages and supposedly on Spenser's The Fairy Queen, and that's what attracted me to this book. Whenever I see these penguins now with the purple here, I'm just very anxious to purchase them and add them to my Greek and Roman texts. Okay. Then more penguin. This time it has the red there, and it is Geoffrey Chaucer, Love Visions. And this is made up of a number of poems. I'll just read them to you. The Book of the Duchess, The House of Fame, The Parliament of Birds. I've already read that. And The Legend of Good Women. Yes, that is one I've been really wanting to take a look at. And how's it laid out? Oh, it's modernized English. So you're not wrestling with Middle English. No, it's not a side-by-side translation. No, that should be interesting nevertheless. Chaucer. I have an Oxford Classics edition of the Riverside Chaucer on its way, so I'll be investigating that this year too. More medieval writing. It is The Superb Piers Plowman by William Langland. This is one of the best Christian allegories I've read. This and Sir Gawain and the Green Knight are probably my two favourites, along with Pilgrim's Progress. Okay, 3 favourites. But this one is just so rich. Absolutely superb. I read it first in the Norton Anthology of the Middle Ages, but I could not really resist getting hold of this Oxford Classics. Okay, so this isn't in verse, whereas my one in the Norton is. Okay, Mr. Clevercraft. Oh dear. Okay, let's put that there. Oh, we're going back a little further in history now. It's St. Augustine with his Confessions. I have a Penguin copy of this somewhere, but I thought why not pick this up too. And in here, of interest to literary studies students, is the passage about how he learned language by seeing his mother and father kind of point to objects and say a word, and then he would copy them. And this theory of how one acquires language was very influential for a long period of time, for centuries in fact, until in the 20th century and the late 19th century perhaps, it was finally demolished, and it was shown that we do not acquire language in this way. Next, Erasmus in Praise of Folly. This is probably the most famous mock encomium ever written. There were many others, and the idea of a mock encomium was you choose something which has no value, and then you kind of construct a piece of writing that argues for its immense value. It was a rhetorical exercise, and so there are ones that are famously about pebbles, drunkenness, etc. And actually, De Quincey's On Murder, considered as one of the fine arts, is one of my favourite examples of a mock encomium. Let's put that over there. Oh, we're really back there in the Middle Ages, aren't we? Because this is now the Romance of the Rose. And this is one of those romances I haven't got round to reading yet. I also have a copy of the Song of Roland on its way. So then I'll pretty much have all of the major romances at my disposal here. Oh, I should show you the cover once again. I thought that was very beautiful actually. And who produced this? A Dutton paperback. Okay, E.P. Dutton. That links us back to Virginia Woolf, doesn't it? Oh no, that's Duckworth. Sorry. E.P. Dutton links us to Denton Welsh. Yes, they did some very nice editions of Denton Welsh, such as this one here of Maiden Voyage. Yeah, E.P. Dutton. Excellent publisher. We're still in the time of the Middle Ages. We're in the Renaissance now, but it's Giorgio Vasari with his The Lives of the Artists. Often this is seen in 2 volumes, so I'm rather glad to just pick it up in one. Who does it have in here? I think we've got Raphael, Leonardo, Giotto, Michelangelo. Okay, so this is supposed to be a very good book. Next up, another Oxford World Classic, but bit close to the present day. It is Barry Lyndon by William Makepeace Thackeray. I love the Stanley Kubrick movie of this book. I think the images of the English countryside in there are as close as one can find on the cinema screen to the beauty of that landscape, although I understand it was filmed in Ireland. No matter. Yeah, Barry Lyndon. Superb. Oh, I should note there, Samuel Johnson on the cover. I'm not sure why that is, but there we go. Another Oxford book. Oh, this is in terrible condition, but never mind. It is La Fontaine with his selected fables. These are usually in verse, so let's just take a look. Oh, and sure enough, yes, they're in verse. Would he who made the starry main, and not without design decide, to write the constellations plain, which he has caused dark time to hide. That's quite an effective translation, isn't it? Okay. Oh, and there are some. Oh, you have it in the French as well. This is a parallel edition. Okay, so this is great. An unhappy apparition. Okay. So I'll show you that. Give you an idea of the damage there. I think it's been left out in the rain or in a box in a damp storeroom. Then what's next? Oh, Bloomsbury again. It's Virginia Woolf, A Writer's Diary. I really do like this illustration here. I'm not so sure about the way the text is presented, but yeah, that illustration is great. Who designed that? Does it say? It's covered up by the price sticker, but there we go. Virginia Woolf, A Writer's Diary. Next up, oh, it's another edition of St. Augustine's Confessions. Yeah, this is one of those old penguin ones. Very solid. And then some more Roman literature. Okay, so first we have Cicero. Although I understand during Cicero's time, the C was always hard, so it would be Cicero, the nature of the gods. It sounds so ridiculous saying it Cicero, wouldn't you, these days? Next up, Caesar. And Caesar is a great writer as well as being a great commander of men. And here we have The Conquest of Gaul. And I have his account of the Civil War from the library out there in the lounge. Okay, so I'm looking forward to reading this. No notes in here, beautiful. And one more, it is Seneca, Four Tragedies and Octavia. So I'm really looking forward to reading this too. Oh, some literary studies next. Alain Rogrier, what is this? For a new novel, Essays on Fiction. For any literary studies students out there, get hold of this book. It's possibly the most accessible work of literary theory I have ever read. Absolutely magnificent. And it has one great chapter I'll draw your attention to from 1957 on several obsolete notions. And it's all about why we should move away from the 19th century novels conventions and do away pretty much with story, characters, commitment, yes, all of these things, right? And he gives very arresting reasons for why we should do so. And it's just written in such an accessible way and with a dash of humor too. All right, much of it sarcastic, I should add. All right, then I had this one that I found by Irving Singer. It's a 3-volume set, and I did find all 3 volumes this time. And it's on the nature of love. His thesis, such as it is, I'm not really fully convinced by, but no matter, because what I'm interested in is that he's concentrated in these 3 volumes many, many different texts dealing with the theme of love. So that is what matters to me. This one, Courtly and Romantic. I'm sure I'll find a lot of interest in there. Volume 3 is The Modern World. Okay, what is that? What is that on the front? I'm not sure whose art that is on the front. I'm not terribly impressed by that. These are published by the University of Chicago Press. And Volume 1 is in this stack somewhere. We'll come on to it in a second. Oh, I spy it here on the top. From Plato to Luther. Yes, so Irving Singer, I'd never heard of those before, but they do seem rather interesting. Next, another romance, and it is Tristan and Isolde. And this one is As Retold by Joseph Bider. And this is one of the best prepared editions because it relies on a French scholar who really studied these variants of the Tristan and Isolde story very closely. And so this is a composite. So this works really well. And it's much better, in fact, than Beryl's The Romance of Tristan, which I showed on a previous video. So yes, this one by Vintage is the superior edition. Next, some feminist writing on Virago Press. All my Virago books are here. There's a lot more behind. They have these beautiful green covers and they often choose delightful artwork. This is Sarah Scott, Millennium Hall. I want to read you a little bit from the back because it will give you the flavour of what this is about. Firstly, the cover shows a detail from a French painting. I'm not going to be able to pronounce that name, okay, but it's about an elegant mansion, and in this idyllic setting live 6 women of independent means who have eschewed the falsehoods of society and come together to establish a utopian community. So, of course, that is going to be of interest to feminists, and it's of interest to me too. So that is wonderful. And then another Virago book, and I really do like this woman's writing, German writer, I believe. It is Christa Wolf with her A Model Childhood. And what does it say on the back? This is a powerful book, a most extraordinary testament. It is her vision of the fundamental strangeness of what seemed at the time a fairly ordinary childhood in the bosom of a normal Nazi family in Landsberg, which makes Christa Wolf's narrative so moving, so convincing. Okay, so it starts in 1933 when Nellie is 4 years old. Beautiful picture there. That is by Tamara de Lempicka, Kizet in Pink. Okay, it reminds me, is it the same artist who did that self-portrait driving a Bugatti? It does look rather like that. Yeah, that is just great. Next, oh, Thomas Mann, staying with German literature. A short novel by Mann, The Transposed Heads. I'd never heard of this. I picked it up and read it. It's a little bit like when Hesse delves into the East, and this takes a very short story from, I'm not sure if it is the Rig Veda. It may not be. I did download a copy of it. I'll have to put it in the video notes. But in that Indian tale, which is a very old one, two characters swap heads, and it's all about which enjoys primacy, the head or the body. And much as Mann does in The Holy Sinner, which I reviewed for the channel, where he takes a romance from the Middle Ages and greatly expands it and adds all kinds of new layers to it. He does the same here, exploding this 2 or 3 page story into I guess we'd call this a novella, and it's very, very effective. However, I was disappointed by the translation. I'll just tell you who translated it. H.T. Lowe Porter. Yes, this is definitely due a new translation, because in here, the Indian goddess Kali is saying things like, hold on chaps, and using that kind of language, and it's just awful. And I went back and compared it with the original German and found that the tone of Kali in Mann's original text is completely different. So very poor translation. More German writing, and a few heavy books here that I do need for my literary studies. First up, The Phenomenology of Mind by Hegel. I'm just finishing off his philosophy of history, which has been really enjoyable and very informative. And so we'll read this very difficult to understand work, and perhaps this outdoes it in terms of difficulty. Heidegger, Being and Time, which is also concerned with phenomenology. I have referenced Heidegger in my work because I do deal with phenomenological episodes in literature, such as occur during the illness experience, when people suffer a kind of derangement of the senses that frees them from a sort of intersubjective world. Yeah, and they have to kind of find new language to describe their experiences. So this is of relevance theoretically to what I'm doing. Then post-structuralist literary theory, and it is Kristeva's book, Time and Sense on Proust. Okay, so very specialized, but beautiful edition that hasn't been messed up by anyone making notes or highlighting. So we have that, and that brings us on to French literature. And here, Georges Perec, a member of the Lipo school, took his own life, did he? Or he died in middle age. I can't remember how he died, but taken from us like Aubrey Beardsley. Far Too Young. Yes, Life, a User's Manual, which takes place all inside a single apartment building in Paris. And that recalls that great French movie Delicatessen, which used the same kind of idea. All right, he also wrote an amazing piece on jigsaw puzzles. If you love jigsaws, actually that might be at the start of this book. To the Memory of Raymond Queneau, great writer. Oh yes, to begin with, the art of jigsaw puzzles seems of little substance, easily exhausted, wholly dealt with by a basic introduction to Gestalt, the perceived object. We may be dealing with a perceptual act, the acquisition of a skill, a physiological system, or, as in the present case, a wooden jigsaw puzzle is not a sum of elements to be distinguished from each other and analysed discreetly, but a pattern, that is to say, a form, a structure. The element's existence does not precede the existence of the whole. It comes neither before nor after it, for the parts do not determine the pattern, but the pattern determines the parts. Knowledge of the pattern and of its laws, of the set and its structure, could not possibly be derived from discrete knowledge of the elements that compose it. What a magnificent sentence to kick off your preamble. He was definitively a genius, Georges Perec. I think he came up with some of the longest anagrams ever produced, and he famously wrote a novel that did not contain the letter E, which was translated into English as a void. Yes, and then afterwards he used lots of E's in another text. A very playful writer. I'm on the second half now, so the home stretch, as it were, and another Oxford classic. It's Nikolai Gogol, Plays and Petersburg Tales. So I do love Gogol. I'm not really acquainted with his plays or his short fiction, so I'll get into that at some point. And then another Russian, it's Tolstoy, The Raid and Other Stories. Well, we love Tolstoy on this channel. I haven't read that many of his short stories, just one about some men on a ship, I believe, and some kind of spirits or saints that chased them from an island. Yeah, I have a dim recollection of that, and that was quite good. So we'll see how that is. Then, oh dear, the master, Thomas de Quincey, and this is the World's Classics edition of Confessions of an English Opium Eater and Other Writings. Let's see what those other writings are. So I do have my copy up here by Penguin Classics, but let's see what Oxford has put in there. Oh, Suspiria de Profundis, the English mail coach, and On the Knocking at the Gate in Macbeth. So, apart from On Murder considered as one of the fine arts, you've basically got everything you need of De Quincey in this book. Yeah, excellent. Another Oxford, and it is Baudelaire, the prose poems and La Fanfalo. Let's see if these are in the original as well as in English. Oh no, it's prose, so no. What do we call them? Prose poems. There's no actual verse in here. No. Okay, very slender volume. And another classic, it is Bede's The Ecclesiastical History of the English People, the Greater Chronicle, and Bede's Letter to Egbert. Often referenced, but I've never actually read any of it myself. And what's the cover illustration is from the opening of the Historia Ecclesiastica. So you have that illuminated manuscript there. Beautiful. Next, Rousseau, Reveries of the Solitary Walker. I have quite a few stories about walking. Thomas Bernhard is probably my favourite writer about walking. I also like Robert Macfarlane, The Old Ways, where he tramps around Britain. That's very good, but Rousseau also was a great walker. And so finally have a copy of this. A Frenchman also associated with Rousseau, right? Letters on England by Voltaire, and a beautiful long-haired Voltaire there, ready to join a heavy metal band. And another French writer, it is Bernard Mandeville, I believe he's French, yes. The Fable of the Bees. Okay, so let's just tell you what this is about if you're not familiar with it. An 18th century cours célèbre, The Fable of the Bees, is comparable with The Prince or Leviathan in the furore it created. Okay, while some like Dr. Johnson found it illuminating, it was vilified in the press, the pulpit, and the courts. Oh dear, a lot of controversy here. Whose drawing is that on the front? Oh, it's Hogarth with a study of heads. All right. Written with a glorious, pugnacious wit and a lightning skill for portraiture, Mandeville's Fable is a masterpiece of the great age of English satire. So, French name, but actually an Englishman. Please forgive me. I think I'm on pretty solid ground by saying that the next writer was from Cuba, though. Born in Cuba. It is Italo Calvino. So here we have The Watcher and Other Stories. And I really like these editions published by Harcourt Brace. Okay, so beautiful covers, and I really like this topography. I have a whole bunch of these here to show you. Difficult Loves, which I have in another edition, but I just picked it up again. Why not? Who's that drawing by on the front? Oh, Paul Klee, who taught at the Bauhaus. Everything really is connected, isn't it? Once you have learned sufficient. And then sci-fi. Oh, this was free, actually. It's Arthur C. Clarke, The 9 Billion Names of God and Other Stories. And The 9 Billion Names of God is a truly magnificent sci-fi story. Yes, superb. I've read a few more in here. One was called Dog Star, about, would you believe it, a dog. And another one, what was it about? A stolen artwork. Yeah, on Mars. Okay, that's better. Excuse me. Now, more French writing. It's Alphonse Daudet, and it's his Letters from My Windmill. And this is just magnificent. It's just so peaceful and gentle. But I have read some of this already, and you have one here about a goat, just very, very gentle. The Girl from Arles, that one was very sad, actually. Customs Men, yeah, this is very beautiful. Okay, highly recommended. Alphonse Daudet, Letters from My Windmill. Then an Italian, it is Federigo Tozzi and his Love in Vain selected stories. This reminded me of Robert Walser. Actually, it's that good. And the first story I read was about a vagabond. It was full of gaps, but it was very sensitive, this portrait of this madman. And it explained why he went mad and in what his madness consisted. Right, next I had to buy this for one of the classes I'm doing this semester, and it is yet another book by Murakami. I think I've managed to read most of his output without enjoying any of it very much, apart from Dance, Dance, Dance. Yes, that was the best of them. This one, what is it? 1Q84? And I can't really believe that the professor thought that we were going to read, what is it, a 1200 page trilogy to talk about it for 3 hours in one class. No, that's never going to happen, is it? So I might get round to it at some point. Almost home. Now, almost home. Next we have from Vienna, the great Karl Kraus with In These Great Times. I've read most of these pieces before. This is also from the University of Chicago Press, and he's just a great satirist from that wonderful time in the history of Vienna when you had von Hofmannsthal and Karl Kraus, and it would be Kokoschka would have been there, and Ravel and Egon Schiele, yeah, these kinds of figures. And there's a great piece in here on the world of posters. Yeah, it's kind of a work of semiotics before Roland Barthes really got going with his mythologies. Picking up on this period is this history book, Winterscheck, Vienna. I am reliably informed now by a French person that you don't try to say like the CLE here. It's like Winterscheck, like that, Winterscheck. Vienna, and it is by Karl E. Schorska, and it has this, Gustav Klimt. Yeah, a bit of artwork there on the front. I said Schiele, maybe it was Gustav Klimt. Maybe I misspoke myself with reference to Karl Kraus. I've read some of this before too. It begins with Ravel, yeah, with a waltz he composed, which kind of deconstructed the waltz. And it's just about how at this period, people were beginning to develop this great skepticism towards language, and you had these new philosophical movements emerging. It's a very interesting book. Then another Kristeva book, and this one contains her word dialogue novel, which is very important for the kind of literary theory that I'm doing. So yeah, hoping to just the right place there. The word within the space of texts. Okay, Calvino again, more of those Harcourt Brace editions. This one, Mr. Palomar. I think Paloma means pigeon, right? So it's Mr. Pigeon there with a great sort of medieval cover. Then T0, a short story collection, I believe. Here's my other copy of Difficult Loves. This has got some great stories in there. The idea is that each person loves in a different way. So a poet loves through their poetry. And then there is a very tender story where a couple are working very hard. One works nights and one works during the day, and they only see one another for about 5 minutes each day, and yet their love is still precious and strong. You know, so it's just all these different takes. Yeah, the adventure of the married couple. Oh, I found another one published by the same publisher, and it is Adam. What is it? Adam One Afternoon. I hadn't really heard of this one. I know nothing about that. Then this is one of his classics, Invisible Cities, all different visions of one city, Venice, which you'll realize as the book winds on. Yeah, this is true poetry. I'll just read a little. Let's find one here. Oh, okay. Lips clenched on the pipe's amber stem, his beard flattened against his amethyst choker, his big toes nervously arched in his silken slippers, Kublai Khan listened to Marco Polo's tales without raising an eyebrow. These were the evenings when a shadow of hypochondria weighed on his heart. Your cities do not exist. Perhaps they have never existed. It is sure they will never exist again. Why do you amuse yourself with consolatory fables? I know well that my empire is rotting like a corpse in a swamp, whose contagion infects the crows that peck it, as well as the bamboo that grows, fertilized by its humours. Why do you speak to me of this? Why do you lie to the emperor of the Tartars, foreigner? Okay, so on it goes. Yeah, it does play with the 1001 Nights, or the Arabian Nights. Then another Calvino collection, his Cosmic Comics. And finally, is this his most famous work? Possibly. If on a winter's night, a traveller. Yes, this one's really great. You know, if you're not familiar with it, it plays with the reading experience itself. So when you sit down, it starts by saying, you are now sitting down, holding the book. If on a winter's night, a traveller by Italo Calvino. You are reading the first few pages and wondering what it will be about. Yeah, very, very clever, right? And then Dickens, almost finished now, and it's his Sikes and Nancy and other public readings. So he adapted the Sikes and Nancy episodes from Oliver Twist for performance. And so I'd never seen this book, but I was very interested to see how he adapted them for the stage, as it were. And finally, it is an Everyman edition, and it is this Italian Tales from the Age of Shakespeare. And some of these are based on stories from the Decameron. Okay, so one of them was the story where a man is duped and then duped again by some thieves and finally ends up inside the tomb of a recently buried cleric, and he steals there a ruby, which is worth the same amount as he earlier lost. And that was very funny in the Decameron, and it was very funny in this version too. That was, I think it was this one, Mino Grimaldi. But these are from a very famous book called William Paynter's The Palace of Pleasure. And the first one here, Melchizedek's, I can't say it unfortunately, Tale of Three Kings, was also very good, about a very sophisticated answer to a question designed to place the person answering in a great deal of danger. Oh no, I think it's Andreuccio of Perugia. That's the one about stealing the ruby there. What do we have here? The Old Man and His Young Wife from The Sackful of News, A Tale from the Forest of Fancy, and then some more tales from Barnaby Rich's His Farewell to Military Profession of Apollonius and Scylla. Yeah, very excited to read these. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes this rather lengthy birthday book haul. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've read any great books lately, why not leave me a comment below? Or if you have anything to say about anything at all that I showed you, it would be great to hear from you. For anyone having their birthday in November who's a Scorpio, such as myself, I also would like to take the opportunity to wish you many happy returns. But for now, all that remains is for me to bid you farewell in the customary fashion. So be safe, be strong, and I shall see you anon. Nanu nanu.